Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. I am Vishal Soni from Elite Wellness Warriors and it's a real pleasure to be with you today. So I'm here to talk about H. pylori and its devastating impacts on ME, CFS, fibromyalgia. When I say devastating impacts on, I'm actually saying that I think that it could be a causal factor that has drifted below the radar, whereas actually we really do need to be looking out for it and its prevalence in our particular set of conditions. So without further ado, if you've got any of these symptoms, you need to be looking into this. So very commonly, severe gas, bloating and digestive issues. I've had them since being diagnosed and prior to being diagnosed with ME, CFS, fibromyalgia. I have an inability to gain weight, but of course actually it can have the reverse. It can almost stop you from losing weight. It's a very odd set of predispositions there that you need to be looking out for. Do you have debilitating energy fatigue issues? Do you have brain fog? Do you have memory issues? Do you have twitching? I had twitching everywhere all over my body, which was really scary. There was a general feeling of toxicity in there. I have vitamins and mineral deficiencies everywhere, in particular the ones for me, vitamin D, vitamin B12. And those are common for people who've got our set of conditions. And too often we are not looking at the possible cause, which is H. pylori. Too often we ignore co-infections such as small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or indeed Candida. So that's what this video is about, and that's why I'm here to discuss this with you. So I am a scientist. I train teachers all around the country. I love what I do. My specialism is, as I said, science, it's biology, and so you will see very much a real passion behind this, because I really do believe that actually as a bacteria, as a pathogen, this is a miracle. It's an evolutionary miracle. But it's also devastating. So 50% of the world's population have got this particular pathogen, but for many of us, we do not have symptoms. It stays inert. But for some of us, quite the opposite. And one of the reasons why it's managed to survive so well and be so virulent is because it contains an enzyme on its surface known as urease. And urease is really clever. So it converts urea to carbon dioxide and ammonia. And I'll come back to carbon dioxide later, but ammonia is the one that we need to be talking about here. And the reason why it's a problem is because ammonia is very alkaline. And alkaline substances, basic science, is the fact that it will neutralize your stomach acid, hydrochloric acid. Now, your hydrochloric acid has got two functions: to kill pathogens, and the second function is to digest proteins, helping the enzyme called protease to be able to do that. When it's able to do all of this trickery and survive your stomach acid, it then is able to move down through your columella epithelium cells, which are these things here, with the help of its flagella, which is like a tail, and it basically gets in there through that mechanism of motility almost. So now it's in there, what's it doing? And this is where things get pretty damaging to our systems. And that is, and you can see it there, one of the things that it's doing is it's releasing something called exotoxins. And exotoxins, there are two of them. One is called VAC-A, and VAC-A causes cell death. It causes something called cell apoptosis, which is basically cell death. And CAG-A is the other exotoxin, and that one actually disrupts your cell integrity. So it basically causes leaky gut. And leaky gut is really bad. You've heard of it, no doubt, many a time. If you haven't, it allows things to get into the system which shouldn't be there, such as undigested food, etc., and that can lead to things like autoimmune conditions because the body doesn't recognize those particular molecules. It recognizes them almost as foreign, creates antibodies against them, and that's essentially why you end up with really bad autoimmune conditions such as Hashimoto's thyroiditis, etc., which affects your thyroid. It also promotes huge inflammation due to something called IL-8, which is a cytokine. And this cytokine attracts neutrophils, which are a type of white blood cell, to the area, which are highly inflammatory. So how does the body then deal with that inflammation? Well, it's going to release things like cortisol, which is almost like water placed on fire. So it's there to dampen down the issue, which is essentially the inflammation. It's dampening down the inflammation caused. That is going to create lots of stress on the body, and many people might suffer things like adrenal fatigue as a result of that, or what they think is adrenal fatigue, or because cortisol is pumped out like the body is experiencing constant stress. Okay. You also end up with more hydrochloric acid being released, which is why you might end up with things like GERD or acid reflux, because that's the symptom. All right. Ultimately, this is pretty bad. You end up with acid reflux over a long period of time. You're taking those Gaviscons and other kind of medicines to deal with that, antacids. But ultimately, you're only dealing with the symptom there. You're not dealing with the causal factor, which may be H. pylori. It's directly linked to stomach ulcers, peptic ulcers, and it's directly linked to stomach cancer. So you've got to be really careful with this. So how do you diagnose this? Well, the first thing you need to be able to do is you need to be able to go to your doctor. It is free. And go and have either a urea breath test or a stool sample done. And the urea breath test will detect carbon dioxide, without going too much into the science, they tag the carbon in this stuff called, I think it's called lactulose. And then when the urea is kind of broken down to release the carbon dioxide, which I told you earlier, that is detected in the exhaled carbon dioxide, and then the doctors will be able to identify that actually you've got H. pylori. Stool sample is the gold standard, and it's looking for the antigens in your stool, which will identify that the bacteria is there. So the treatment, what do you need to do in terms of treatment? Well, there's a triple therapy that you can have initially, and that is a PPI, which is like lansoprazole or omeprazole, 2 antibiotics. In my case, I had amoxicillin and metronidazole, and unfortunately that particular treatment option failed. So I then went on to this particular treatment, which was amoxicillin, tetracycline, and lansoprazole, and that also failed, rather annoyingly. And the reason why it failed is because I had an awful reaction to the tetracycline. So the next stage for me was I had to go on a really high dose version of the triple therapy that I took initially. And according to the literature in PubMed, this ultra high dose treatment has a 94.7% success rate. So I'm waiting to have a retest, and let's see whether that's worked. It's really important to say that those are antibiotics and PPIs, but coinciding with that, really, if you want to go down the natural route, the ones that have shown great promise, mastic gum, berberine, probiotics such as Saccharomyces boulardii, to repopulate the microbiome to mitigate against the effects of the antibiotics, for example. Really very powerful, but the primary allopathic kind of treatment that you'd go for would be the first gold standard option, and then coinciding with that, you might want to take those. But again, you got to check with your doctor whether you're able to do that. But I know for a fact you can take probiotics with those triple therapy or quadruple therapy in some people. That is absolutely fine, and doctors actually actively encourage you to do that. So, co-infections. Now, this is the final part. SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where they should not be. Now, if you remember correctly, I said at the beginning of the video that it lowers the stomach acid. or raises the pH of that acid, which will lead to other pathogens getting into the small intestine, which is towards the upper part here. And if those are allowed to proliferate, you're going to end up with more gas, more bloating, more digestive issues. Candida is another one. So Candida, we've all got it, but actually the hyphal form, which is the pathogenic nasty form, shouldn't be there and actually proliferate, especially if you've been on antibiotics. So that needs to be dealt with. And two methods that really are very effective, well actually there's three, but the ones that I find most useful are caprylic acid, and the medical route is to go down the road of diflucan. So you've probably come across those before. Those are common treatments, especially diflucan, widely known for the treatment of invasive candidiasis, which is not very common, but it is a known side effect of taking antibiotics. So that's something to watch out for. And once again, I bring you back to, if you've got and have been diagnosed with H. pylori, you may also have SIBO. And when you treat H. pylori, you can end up with Candida. So these are not isolated. They can be synergistic. They do exist synonymously with one another because they help each other out. And that's why I've created this video, to kind of bring your attention to that. So if you've got those vitamin deficiencies, if you feel crap, if you feel awful, and you know that you've got something like ME, CFS, fibro, then please look into this. I can't stress it enough. Folks, just do it. It's free. The NHS, if you're in the UK, will help you do that. And if you do have to pay for your treatments, like in America, for example, just, check it out. What do you have to lose? If you've got insurance, then hopefully that will cover it. So that's me. And I hope that video was really useful, and thank you very much for joining us. So once again, if you liked the video, please like it. And if you really liked what you've heard, you found it useful, then just join Elite Wellness Warriors and subscribe to this channel. It'd be great to see you back here again. All right, take care, everybody. Thanks. Bye-bye.